Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. I'm very excited to be talking to this week's guest author, Sylvia Liu, and I have some of her books behind me. She's written a lot of different kinds of books. We've got middle grade, we've got a picture book. Her latest is Near and Dear, but we're also going to be talking about some of her other works. Giveaway. Remember, today is the last day. It is very easy to do, only takes a few minutes. So go to our pinned post and make sure you do that before it ends tonight at midnight. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk about my books and
Yeah, I'm excited we're doing this because for those that don't know, Sylvia was on a panel of ours in May. And so we did get to talk some, but I'm glad to be able to kind of go a little more in depth because that was a really fun panel with a lot of different people because we had different authors. Everybody only got a certain amount of time. So now we'll get to do a full amount with you. So maybe we could start off, you could introduce yourself and tell us about your journey to becoming an author and illustrator.
Sure. Hi. Well, I'm Sylvia Liu, and I write picture books in middle grade. And I originally was not an author. I started my career actually as an environmental attorney for about 10 years. And then when my kids were young, I quit the law and decided to first try my hand at children's illustration because that was always an interest and passion of mine. And that kind of led to writing picture books. And so my picture book, A Morning with Grandpa, is my first published book that came out in 2016. And a few years before that, I started writing novels. I took classes and I found I really enjoyed it, and especially middle grade. So my book, Hana and the Ghost Crab Nation, was the book that got my agent and basically my first contract. And then I connected with a really great Scholastic editor, and so now I have a number of books with them, two that have been published, the Manatee's Best Friend and Near and Dear, and I have a couple more coming out next year with them as well.
What is that like to work with Scholastic? I mean, is that a different process than working with another publisher? Or, I mean, they're just such a that's such a great deal to be working with them.
Yeah, so working with them from an editorial perspective is not that different. You know, I'm working with an editor like I work with another editor. The difference comes at the back end when the book comes out. The distribution is way different because my book goes right into their book fairs. And
Right.
so it's really amazing, you know, to see my book in the flyer or in the book clubs or the book fairs, you know, and
Right.
they have
Wasn't
a
it one time I saw it was actually like part of the display that they had,
Right.
like,
So their bookcases have these like cardboard headers, and so what this past spring, several of the book clubs got the basically the dog and the deer that are on the cover of Near and Dear. You know, basically it was a big header display, so that was really exciting.
that's amazing. Um, so like you talked about, you've written middle grade novels, picture book, and you also write poetry and essays, which I hadn't known about. So is your writing process different depending on what age group you're writing for, what who the audience is?
I would say the beginning where I get inspired to write something isn't really that different because
Mhm.
I get inspired by like things I read about in the news or just my interest in the environment or, you know, other, you know, random interests will inspire me to want to write a book. But then deciding what format it is kind of like depends. Usually I veer towards middle grade because that's where I really like, but there's some things that feel more like a poem or more like a picture book. And so, and then the process of writing is different. Obviously, picture books and poetry are very, you know, short, concise forms. You really have to pay attention to the word choice, you know, exactly, you know, you're limited. Whereas novels, you have more space to, you know, get your ideas across.
Right.
Um, so.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And speaking of middle grade, I do want to make sure we get to talk because I think we were talking about this before. I have so many like general questions for you, but I want to make sure we talk specifically about different books. Like Near and Dear is your latest one, and it was just featured in the latest Scholastic Book Fair. So can you tell us about it and what inspired this book?
Yeah, sure. So, Near and Dear is set in Central Virginia, and it's a 12-year-old girl. Her name is Sienna, and she lives with her parents who just opened a bed and breakfast. They're sort of like uprooted their lives in the city and are now in the countryside. And the thing with Sienna, she just wants to stay in control. But when her adorable sheepadoodle dog befriends an abandoned fawn, she wants to try to save the fawn, but doesn't want anybody's help. So that kind of determination creates a lot of chaos. And then there's a whole another subplot where she befriends a guest, a boy at the inn, and his mother's a scientist who basically teaches her a lot of interesting facts about trees.
Right. Yeah, which is something that was really fun because I think your books do incorporate a lot of science, and I know you've talked about that. Like you said, it's like fun facts about trees and the like the connections between them and the mushrooms and how they're kind of a sign of the health of the forest and but it incorporates it in a way that is it seems very different than just reading it in a nonfiction book. So how do you think that your books kind of help get kids interested in science?
Well, I do hope that, like, I often write about things that interest me, and so I get excited about them, and I hope that that excitement kind of conveys in the story. But I also hope that the story sort of pulls a reader in and gets them interested. For example, like my Manatee story, it has a lot. That's probably my story that's most environmentally, on point in terms of like this girl wants to fight to save manatees.
Right.
But I put in a lot of what I think are like fun facts that like elementary kids like. Like one of the things I found out that I loved that was so funny was that manatees actually control their buoyancy in the water by farting. And so that's
That's a
something that,
perfect fact for a middle grader.
I know like middle graders just love that. So, um,
I also thought it was neat, like in Near and Dear, how I mean, so you've got the fun facts, but you also have a lot of role modeling. I mean, like you said, there was the guest who, a female scientist, and and you find out what, kind of what she's doing as a scientist and how it relates to like a development coming in and different people having different opinions about it. So I thought it was kind of neat because sometimes kids are interested in science, but they're not really sure like what actual scientists do. Like they want to help the environment, but they don't know exactly what that means. So that was kind of neat to have those like the role models in there. And like you said, it's not just about like it's also about all these relationships and the friendship and her relationship with her parents and so on. So there's a lot going on, besides just say like an animal friendship. Although that's of course the heart of the story.
and what you pointed out, the other thing that I kind of try to do is like my characters are usually 12 years old. So I try to make them like do things that a 12-year-old can do and can still make an impact. I don't have them, running for president or whatever, but instead they're able to, maybe work with city council or they're able to, like influence or convince somebody in power to do something, so.
Yeah, and a lot of your books I thought that was neat that they have kids taking on a leadership role. In some cases, like in the Hannah Shue book, with at great risk to themselves. What do you hope kids take away from your books?
Um, I guess basically what you kind of alluded to that I want kids to know that they have agency, in their lives and that they can make change and especially for things they care about. For me, I care about the environment. So in my stories, the kids tend to, be fighting for the environment. But even in Hannah Shue, it's not directly the environment, but she's standing up for her friends,
Mhm.
fighting this high-tech conspiracy. And
Right.
so the idea is that even as a kid, you have the power to stand up for what you believe in.
And sometimes it seems like they're kind of bumping up against what their parents want and trying to be the obedient children and yet do what they think is right. And it seems like there's like this real dilemma of like, how much do I follow the rules and how much do I bend the rules or how much do I do something new? So how do you think your books kind of help kids navigate that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, that age group also, I think it's the age, when you're 10, 11, 12, you're starting to realize you're your own person, that you
Right,
don't have to, you're not just an extension of your parents or you don't always, have to agree with your parents.
right.
So I think my stories kind of show that kids can, stand up to their parents if they believe they're right and, you know, in a way that, like, they make their arguments. They're not like, rebelling just to be rebellious, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, like there's a point to it, and they still come away actually with good relationships with your parents. I know in the Hannah Shoe and Near and Dear, both books at the end, they actually have actually improved the relationship with their parents, which I thought was really neat. Like you said, it's not rebelling just to rebel, but it's kind of learning how to be their own person and do what they think is right.
Right.
Yeah. And so we talked about, a lot of your books talk about caring animals. I did want to talk a little bit about Hannah Shoe because it on the surface, we were talking about this before. On the surface, it seems really different from your other books, which do focus more like, on Near and Dear, you have a sheepadoodle and an abandoned fawn, and or you have a manatee. But this one, it's so different because of like the sci-fi and talking about the overreach of technology. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and how do you see it fitting in with the other stories that you've written?
Okay. Well, so in some ways it's very different in that it is like sci-fi, and it really reflects like my long-term love of sci-fi. I've always enjoyed reading and watching sci-fi, especially this subgenre, which is cyberpunk, which is like, Blade Runner. It's the idea that we live in a high-tech future with a lot of corporation control, but people have still the power to be able to fight it. And I feel like that's basically becoming more and more relevant every day.
Right.
And it might not even feel that futuristic anymore, when you like read the news. But that's sort of like the main part of the story. But underneath the story, there is an environmental theme. And so that does come across partly in the character Hannah. She's kind of an old soul. She doesn't buy into the high tech. She likes to make things with her own hands, and she really loves being outdoors. And some of the like most happy like scenes that she has are in the outdoors, either in the beach or in the woods near her home.
Right.
And then also like what is going on in the environment and how people should deal with it is actually a theme that is like that the characters really grapple with, and even the villain really grapples with. So that's like the underlying theme of the story.
Yeah, what when we were talking about it before, I was saying that on the surface, this seems really different than your other books. In some ways, it is, with the sci-fi and being set in the future. I think is it like 2053 or 2050 something? I can't remember exactly.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so which is funny because that's only, that's like 25 years away or whatever. It's not
yeah, I
really
think
that
I
far.
figured out Grandma was born around the same time I am. So that was kind of hard to read
Yeah,
that she's the grandma now, but
yeah, it was funny because I did try to like, I actually did, like do the math, and I was trying to think like, oh, the parents of like 12-year-olds today, it'd be fun to like give them some callbacks,
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It was like very nostalgic reading about her life, but then when you get into the story, I mean, a lot of it is very related to your other works because it talks about kind of the need to still have wild spaces, like in nature, but also in yourself to have something that I think was this the book where you got into the is it the opticon or the panopticon? The idea that you're always being watched
right.
and I think maybe it was the grandma that was talking about that, and that you're always under surveillance. So the need to have some spaces that are just yours where you can kind of be yourself, which I think is really related to the other about like the importance of nature. But it is also not saying that technology is bad either. I mean, how do you think that this book kind of shows kids and maybe parents that there can be a balance of
Yeah.
technology and nature?
Well, first of all, let me back up because I don't know. Let me just describe briefly the
Yes.
premise of the story, which is that in Hannah's Shoe, it's in the near future, and kids, when they turn 13, they get their brains connected directly to, I call it the multi-web, but essentially it's being online on the internet at all times. And the Hannah Shoe is this kid who's about to, have that happen to her, and she and her friends are in a summer program where they're training to learn all about it, and they learn that something nefarious is going on and that might be targeting them, and some of the kids are falling sick and their tech isn't working, and so she discovers that there's this conspiracy that she needs to fight. So that's like the story basically. And sorry, you were saying that how does this fit in with the rest of my themes?
Yeah. I mean, just
Well,
that,
and
and kind of the idea that that nature is important, but that doesn't mean technology is necessarily bad either.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean the thing is, like, I think basically I was exploring how, they do use technology to connect with each other and to help solve the problem. And, ultimately she doesn't just rely on the old school non-technology. She really, she one of her allies is an outsider who's very connected. She's like a hacker. And so she helps them. So, technology is a tool, right? It can be
Right.
used for good or evil. And I was hoping mainly to raise questions and kind
Hmm.
of to hold up a little bit of a mirror to our society, like people are super connected right now, and we are under a panopticon, where everyone sees what each other are doing, and so are there ways to kind of navigate all this?
Right, right, and it does kind of. I mean, one of the things I liked about it is it showed how technology um, kind of left possibilities for, say, like with gender identity or things like that. Because when you're online, you can change how you look, or you can change your pronouns, or you can kind of play around with your identity or how you'd like to present. And yet, there's also the danger because everybody like you can kind of just look at somebody and it gives you all of their data. Like, here's their name, here's their parents, here's their occupation, all that. And it's like, oh, but I wouldn't want that. And it's like, wait, isn't that already true? That people, I mean, it takes a few clicks for people to do that now, but basically that information is already out there for most
Right.
of us. So it does, I think, make you kind of, like you said, it may not seem quite as futuristic as we might think. Do
Yeah.
you think that, because you wrote this a few years ago, have you seen things happen since you wrote it that you're like, oh, that's what I talked about?
Um, yeah, I mean, well, the basic premise of getting your brain connected online. I mean, when I wrote it, there was a few like one of the things I always like do in school visits that kind of blows kids' minds away is I do like a true or false little like science, like I flash up like a statement and they have to guess if it's true or false.
Mm.
And so even back then, I found some research, and I like one of my slides is, scientists have connected rat brains to the internet, and that is true. And then there's another one that says scientists have connected rat brains to human brains, and that's also true. um, and so, like, then I explain it a little bit, but so all of that was like in its infancy. But I think even now it's just further. Like Elon Musk's Neuralink. He's been trying to. He has actual human people. Experimenting now with something in their brains like a chip to connect. So
Busy.
yeah. And then you see like people with glasses, that have like basically
Right,
an overlay that can probably pull up information about like seeing who you are or whatever.
right, right. Do you think that that you will explore kind of the sci-fi genre more in your future books? Do you have plans for that, or what can you tell us about your future projects?
Yeah, so I would love to write more, even in this world, but for now, like the next book that I have coming out is another Scholastic book called "Stealing the Score," and
Mhm.
it's a quite different, only in that it's not about the environment, but it's about another a passion of mine, which is like soccer. I actually grew up watching the World Cup because I grew up in Venezuela,
Right.
and then the last couple of years since the last World Cup, I've been just so interested in all sorts of international soccer. So this story is like set in Miami next year, next spring, on the eve of the World Cup coming to the U.S. because the World Cup is coming to the
Right.
U.S.
Right.
And so it's the story of three teens who are super fans. Well, the boy, Ethan, is a competitive player. The girl, Sasha, is a competitive online player.
Hmm.
And the third boy is a social media influencer. And
Oh, I love
so
that.
they get together and there's a scavenger hunt that kind of goes awry, and it ends up there's a soccer superstar that goes missing. And so
Mhm.
the three kids basically have to work together to find this soccer star. And when he goes missing, like there's like a cascade of like wild things that happen in the rest of the soccer world where players start to like mess up. It's almost like a mass hysteria. And so the kids feel like they have to find him to save the World Cup.
Right. Oh, I love that. I mean, it's perfect since I know there'll be a lot of interest more interest than usual in the World Cup since it's going to be here next year. And
Yeah.
plus, kind of similar themes about kids, being able to make an impact in the world and help others.
Yeah. And then of course I always like to, you know, write about friendship. So there's friendship themes there, how they have to navigate a little bit of conflict, but then of course they'll end up, being stronger friends at the end.
And when does that come out?
It comes out in February.
February. Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. And I was just watching the time because I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to, if we can, talk a little bit about Kidlit 411, which you co-founded, because I think that's something it, that I think is such a great resource for authors and illustrators. Can you tell us a little bit about it and kind of what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, sure. So it's a website and a community, kidlit411.com. And my friend Elaine Kiley Kearns and I started it probably like 12 and a half years ago now.
Wow.
And we were together in a picture book critique group. And at the time we were very, new writers. And so we were always looking for craft articles online. And we decided to gather what we gathered and put it into a website. And now over the years, it's really blossomed. It has probably thousands of articles on everything from craft to industry tips, like how to get an agent, how to market your books. Even there's a section on like, indie publishing, if you want to do your own publishing. And then we have a companion Facebook group that's really active. It's over 18,000 people in it now. And
Wow.
so a lot of people, what's nice about it is there are actually a lot of people who are very well established in the industry, including agents and editors who are in there. So they give a lot of good advice. And then we also have a weekly newsletter that goes out that has about 7 to 10 of these links that we put up every week. And also we highlight some new books that we give away. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop, we say, for like if you're an aspiring or even established writer or illustrator, there's a lot of information.
Yeah, then so I imagine that is such a great resource for anybody starting out because I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed that said that, oh, I'd always wanted to be a writer for years and I had these manuscripts, but I just didn't know how to get started. I didn't know how to actually publish a book. So that's an amazing resource. Can you tell people again the name of the website?
It's kidlit411.com. So KIDLIT 411. And I always recommend SCBWI as well, Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. But this is also, I feel like we do provide a lot of great information as well. So
Very well. I encourage everybody to go and take a look at that and to read your books. Like you said, we've been talking about Hana and Near and Dear.
Oh, I
And
forgot to show you. I actually have the cover of Stealing the Score.
look at
So,
that.
yeah,
That looks amazing.
yeah.
Well, we will be sure to share about it once it is out in February. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thanks all of you for watching. If you joined us late, this is going to be up in a few minutes on Instagram. And as always, it will also be up on our YouTube channel. If you haven't entered this week's giveaway, go to our pin post so you can do that before it ends tonight at midnight. And thank you all for watching. We really appreciate all of you. And thank you, Sylvia. It was so good to talk with you.
Thank you so much.
All
All
right,
right.
bye, everybody.
Bye.